We just got some new video in. I will be watching it for the first time right along with you. This is of a Russian missile attack on the Ukrainian city of Kryvyi Rih, which is the hometown of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Let's watch. All right, that is terrifying. That's the moment you could see that these missiles hit a residential and university building. You can see there in rubble. At least 4 people were killed, 73 others injured in the attacks. Those numbers really could rise. There is a huge rescue effort underway.
Well, CNN's Nick Paton-Walsh is on the ground in Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown has been hit by missiles. Kyiv blames Russia. Ukrainian officials say at least 4 people have lost their lives in the attack, with more than 40 injured. Have a look at Nick's report.
It's startling, really, to see the number of injured involved. Over 50 and 4 dead, including a 45-year-old woman and her 10-year-old daughter, and 2 men as well. Now, one of the witnesses, Natalia Balaba, from an apartment block near where one of these missiles landed, described how her husband was knocked off her feet and how her child was basically safe because they were in the bathroom. And indeed, another missile landing near a polytechnic for economic and technological studies, where another witness described how there was nobody in the building where the missile landed, but they simply didn't have time even to respond. This startling, frankly, because it appears to be an escalation by Russia to hit civilian areas. Kryvyi Rih, as you said, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine's hometown, a vast, sprawling industrial town, quite far at this point since the front lines have changed away from the fighting, but clearly a place that Russia today wanted to inflict damage upon. Now, it's important to point out now when we talk about Ukrainian drone attacks on areas like you showed the video there, Moscow City in the Russian capital, that pales into insignificance compared to the daily damage being done to Ukraine by often indiscriminate, blatantly vicious Russian missile strikes. But the images that emerged from Moscow City, an upscale, glass-towered financial district, a sign really of the opulence that Russia's tried to maintain on the global stage over the past decades, that being hit by Ukrainian drones that frankly a year ago you wouldn't even thought could possibly get through Russian air defences. That is indeed a deep psychological blow, and one I'm sure that the Kremlin feel they have to respond to in some way, despite the fact, strangely today, their spokesperson Dmitry Peskov calling those drone attacks an act of desperation. But we are here in the south, Zaporizhia, where Ukraine continues to push forward in its counter-offensive. Some slow and at times reversed progress, particularly to the east of these front lines, but the tempo of this war certainly rising at this moment as Russia feels itself potentially in its motherland more under attack. Volodymyr Zelensky said yesterday that the war is gradually returning to Russia, but it is quite clear that we will continue to see this blatant bid by Russia to impact a civilian toll on Ukraine, regardless of how they're faring on the battlefield here.
Nick Paton-Walsh reporting there for the bigger picture then on that war on the ground and on this summit we are hearing about in Saudi Arabia. I'm with CNN's Nick Robertson. Nick, it's good to have you. The Kremlin has said it will be monitoring these upcoming talks, reportedly to be held in Jeddah this weekend. What can we expect at this point?
A placeholder, perhaps. Saudi Arabia staking its position as being a principal arbiter between these two countries. Neither at the moment appears ready, if you look at what's happening on the battlefield and listen to what they're saying, to settle for anything less than pushing ahead with the fight. Ukraine's in the middle of its counteroffensive. Interestingly, President Putin was pushed last week by African leaders saying, look, both sides need to stop in this conflict. You need to disengage on the battlefield. And his point was, well, we can't do that as Russia because the Ukrainians are attacking us. He kind of sidestepped the issue that it's Russia that invaded Ukraine. The point being that peace talks are most productive when both sides figure it's time to talk up and settle for peace, and we don't seem to be at that moment. However, Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, wants to get involved and does have a degree of leverage with President Putin in Russia, with the Chinese who have influence, with the Ukrainians.
And has certainly been involved in mediating hostage releases over the past 18 months or so. I think it's really important that when we when we heard first reports of this meeting, which is still not being confirmed by Saudi Arabia, as I understand it, as of yet, but certainly the Kremlin and the Ukrainians seem to believe that this peace summit, as it were, is going ahead. The reports are that this will be a quite expanded set of countries in attendance, including those from the global south. I just wonder how important it is, to your mind, that there is as wide a representation of countries as possible at this summit.
I think that's something that's going to be attractive to President Zelensky because his voice on the world stage, while it resonates with his allies, is not as loud as President Putin's is, particularly speaking to the global south. Putin
These allies, of course, the
has...
Ukraine, are very much Western-focused, aren't they?
They are. And Zelensky, if his representatives, if they go to Jeddah, and as President Zelensky had when he was there at the Arab League summit earlier this year, back in April, May, was able to put forward his 10-point peace plan. And so if the advantage for the Ukrainians, and perhaps this explains why the Russians are reticent about going, the advantage for the Ukrainians is to get their message of what they're about and the terms of their peace deal on the agenda with the global south, who have, to a degree, been criticizing the West, therefore indirectly criticizing Ukraine's stance in this war. So that's a chance for them. How does this actually advance the process? You know, the Saudis typically can often play a big role initially hosting peace efforts, but it's that small diplomatic follow-up that's going to be key. We don't have enough details to see that yet, but let's just flag that diplomatic follow-up is what will make or break these efforts.
And Nick, of course, you know, the oil market sort of as a sort of backgrounder to the entire 18 months worth of conflict that we are seeing here is extremely significant. And of course, Saudi play a key role as leader in OPEC Plus. You know, the oil cartel, which includes, with its plus, Russia.
And I think what we've heard from the Saudis more and more over the past couple of years is they are going to take decisions that are in their national interest.
Correct.
What's in Saudi's national interest right now? Having a stable oil market at a certain price that's going to bring in them the money that they need to make these huge investments that they're talking about in their infrastructure, diversifying away from hydrocarbons, all of that. So their interest here will be to sort of control the destabilizing effect of what Russia's doing in this war.
Let's be quite clear that the Saudis, who have taken a, quote, neutral position in this conflict to date, not changing their position by hosting this meeting.
No, I mean, look, we've seen them give $400 million to Ukrainians as a sort of a humanitarian fund. We've seen them, apparently, it seems at times, side with Russia in decreasing oil output to increase the price of oil, which benefits Russia because it helps it fund the war in Ukraine. They've received heavy criticism for that. So they do play a swing role, but in terms of their neutrality, it appears that MBS wants to have a big stake as a world-leading diplomat, putting Saudi Arabia in a positive light back on the world stage, has made deals with China over Iran that is still sticking, over Yemen that's still sticking. That's brought a good degree of positive benefit in relations with the United States. And the other big prize for the US and Saudi in their relations is whether or not Saudi Arabia will have a rapprochement with Israel. And there's a lot for discussion, and that's under discussion in that's actually having some positive steps. But for the Saudis to make that work, this is something with Israel on that file. They need to get it done while President Biden's in office. So that's got a time limit on it.
Always good to have you, Nick. Thank you very much indeed.